So, Brian is my friend, and I'm really pleased to admit that.
Is that how you're going to begin?
Yes, Brian, you are my friend, but your sense of humor is so awful. And you're always telling these jokes, and like maybe 1 of 10 lands. And I know you think you're funny.
First of all, you're really bad at math. And second of all, you're really bad at humor.
No,
so how would
I'm
you
not.
know?
I think people laugh at my jokes,
but
and I don't have to be intentional.
They're being
about it.
polite, first of all. But have you ever had somebody walk in the room and throw you this idea? They're super excited about it. Their hands are flapping, excited about it, and you have no idea what they just said. Like none. Like you're not even sure they're on planet Earth.
Wouldn't that be an awesome person to be around all the time and be friends with? Yes. That is the right answer.
How did we become friends?
We became friends. I showed up at your church. I came to PCC when it was just a couple years old, and I was a wreck. And I remember sending you an email kind of introducing myself. I'm here. I had 5 kids. I'm newly separated on my way to a divorce. I'm a mess. But I'm here in your church and just introducing myself. And by the way, do you know that the slides that you're using every week, no one knows how to spell the word excerpt? Because you guys were writing excerpt on scripture slides. I'm like, how? I just gently pointed that out, which
became a lifetime of gentle pointing things out.
You know,
I think when you first came, it was obvious that you were a good musician, but there was, what I saw in you was this deep sense of brokenness, but really an unresolved question. I think the question you were trying to figure out is, because of what has happened, because of some things that you had done, am I worthy? Do I have any value to God? And can I make any kind of contribution? You really weren't asking to get involved, but underneath of all this brokenness was this: is God ever going to use me again? Am I ever going to be forgiven? Am I all of those things? And I was drawn to. I'm always drawn to, for me, at the time, the most broken person in the room. But it wasn't just one-sided. I think you also saw something great happening, God doing something. And we very quickly, we didn't ask permission to be honest with each other, but we very quickly took some risks in being honest. I remember when I met with you, we met at this pizza joint, and I said, hey, come help me change the world. I remember you saying, why in the world would you ask me to be a part of that? And it really wasn't about the job. It was about, I really believed in what we were doing, and I believed that God could use you to help us get there. And I think in that period of time, there were several critical components of us taking steps to earn some trust. And I remember the very first one was when you called me and said, you're about to make a major mistake here at the church, which had to be risky for you.
And that was, I didn't work here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I did. I had seen something that I just didn't know if you had a perspective. I mean, you were young then.
Ah, nice.
But it seemed like a young church, young leader, and there was something going on in a particular ministry area, and I didn't think that you appreciated it, and it did feel really risky, but just to raise my hand and say, are you aware of this? And yeah, I think we've always had that kind of truth-telling. And there's been multiple layers, and in a way that I didn't appreciate. I came into this season of my life with some issues with church, with some issues with men in authority, and I remember the times that when we did start working together, I would sometimes get triggered by something,
That's
not
true.
to borrow a word, but I get upset about something, and you would just meet me head on. You
Yeah,
remember?
I remember.
In the offices early on, I was really upset about something, and you said something to me that no one had ever said in my life ever. You looked at me and said, "You're being irrational." And
we were standing on the steps.
Yep.
We were outside standing on the steps, and I said, you're not being rational, right? You know you're not being rational, right?
This is also a hallmark of our. I remember things, and you remember them correctly.
Well, I mean,
it happens a lot, but that's right. I wasn't being rational, and you were willing to just tell me that, and that became kind of a buzzword for us for the next couple of years too. It was a way I trusted you. We talked through it, and then you were able to tell me in subsequent times this isn't really rational.
But it's gone both ways. So later, once we started working together, and we were willing to be truthful with each other, which I think is a hallmark of real friendships. I mean, you cannot have a real friendship where you're not telling the truth to each other. And for me, one of the critical moments in my ministry, and I think for our friendship, sort of intersected with this moment backstage one time when I had, I'm good with words, and sometimes I've leaned on some ability there and cheated on preparation. And you said we were back. I'll never forget this. And you just said, you're not honoring your gift. You're not honoring your gift, which is to say, you could do this better, but you're not. And it was so powerful for me. I mean, I think it was just one of the key. It really helped me get better, but it helped us because I realized, Beth is really going to be honest with me, and there just aren't that many people, particularly the position that I'm in. People just for some reason just don't. And maybe that's just generally with all people. You gotta earn the right to say those kinds of things.
Yeah, and it's not like I walked around looking for ways to be bossy and tell you things about your life, though I do that sometimes, but I think an important part of our friendship is that we've both been willing to make ourselves vulnerable to that. You have talked a lot at church about the season of depression that you were in, and that to me, I was invited into that by Susan, by your wife, in a unique way, but by you too. And I'll never, ever, ever forget. Susan had to be out of town. You were home, and she was worried about you. You were not well.
I was not okay.
You were not okay at all. And Susan called me and asked if Tony and I would go over and check on you. And that, just her asking, and then us walking over to the house and seeing you, for me, certainly the lowest I'd ever seen you ever, realizing you're not okay, but knowing that we'd been invited to be in that space with you, and we couldn't fix it, but we were just there. We just showed up. That's an honor to me, to be invited into those vulnerable places like that.
Well, I think we've done that with each other. I think along the way now, we have permission, not just with each other, but I think this is a key component. And when we decided to talk about this today, one of the questions that came up, which was, a little bit of a caution, was, is it okay to have really close friendships with somebody who is of the opposite sex? Can a man have a good friendship with a woman, or vice versa? And how is that okay? And how do you mitigate all of that? Because I mean, that's just being honest. I mean, that's the truth. There is in the world we live in today, there's been a whole lot of stories of this going badly. And how have we mitigated against that? I think one of the things is just a consideration that you and I think of each other like brother and sister. I really do. I really do feel that way, and I know that you feel that way. The other thing is that our spouses are friends with us. So Beth and I and Tony and Susan take an annual trip every year. There's an artist, a Christian artist we just love, and Andrew Peterson. And every year we go see his Behold the Lamb of God.
No matter how far away.
No matter how far away, or how bad the weather is.
We drove to Knoxville. Last year. And then a couple of years ago, I mean, we had somehow not planned for it, and Beth calls on like a Tuesday and said, "Hey man, like the concert's like tomorrow," or some dumb thing, and so we figured out a way to make it work. But our spouses are involved, and I would say, of the four of us, obviously we're the closest with each other. But I have a relationship with Tony, and Susan has a relationship with you, and so that, I think that's part of what really makes it work, and it's an important component, at least from where I'm. I think it's really, it was important for me early on, because particularly for a man in authority. And a friendship out of that. I was, I think I probably had a protective barrier around me for a long time. But I think if you're willing to build safe boundaries with spouses and significant other people, so you always, I just never doubted that we could have a friendship that was pure and honest. There's never been anything weird about it at all. And I think just knowing, I don't know, you're a guy of really strong, I don't want to say anything nice about you, but you're a guy of really good
Appreciate
character.
That.
No, you are. And it made it easy to do that. And that's really been instrumental in my life, to have a friend that was a male that was completely trustworthy, 100%. It's a rare thing. I'm really grateful for it.
Well, I'm grateful for it too. I do think that for anybody though, the point is to have some really good friends, and the components of that we've been able to not. It's not an accident that we have trust with each other. I mean, that's something we've built over time, over time, and that trust has been at times put to the test. I mean, there are times when we've been when we've had some pretty
We broke up for a while.
yeah, we've had some knockdown dragouts.
Yeah, we broke up our friendship for a while because
you were a jerk.
yes, because I was a jerk. Because I know your issues and your buttons, and I pressed them anyway.
Yeah.
And those are times when I just really had some serious reckoning to do. And again, I know what your issues are. It was really hard, but I had to tell you that I was going to step back from ministry for a while. That was really hard for you, and I had to think. Do I just try to keep my friend happy, or do I do what God's asking me to do, which was to pull back from my PCC work for a while? Man, that was hard. And like, you didn't speak to me like for 2 months. You wouldn't talk. You wouldn't even talk to me. You're so weird.
I think you're manufacturing part of this,
I
but
am
it's
not.
okay. It's okay. Rewriting history is something you're really good at.
You don't remember? I had to call you up and say, we have to meet and talk about this. Meet me at Brewster's.
I
Don't you
remember that. Yes, I remember that part of it.
Because you wouldn't talk to me.
Okay. Well, it might be because I had work to do. And Beth and I, one of the things we figured out is we don't do well when we go long spans of time and don't get to have some kind of conversation
or a fight
or whatever. But yeah, I think our friendship has been something we've been deliberate about, and that's part of the point. Friendships don't happen just by accident.
They don't happen by accident, and they have bad or difficult moments to them.
Like any relationship.
Like any relationship.
Relationship.
And I think the thing is, instead of thinking, oh, but I thought you were my friend. Why would you be mean to me? Or why would you call me irrational? Or why would you do? Instead of kind of freaking out about something, thinking, oh wait, this is a person I respect and I love, and I'm in this for the long haul. So we need to talk about this. And that's one thing I think that's really made this last and made it enduring and made it so precious. Because like there's nothing. I know you're my forever friend. I feel like we should sing, but I mean, I know that. I know there's nothing that is going to happen that if I don't call, you're going to be there.
Right.
And I feel the same way about you.
Yes.
And I think that only comes through trust.
Yes.
And going through the
which
tough
takes
stuff.
time to build.
Which takes time. So what do you remember that's fun?
I think part of the adventure of good friendship is doing some just life together. And every friend has some things that you share in common. For us, one of the things that we share in common is we're on mission together. We really both believe in what we're trying to do. So it might sound like, well, they're just colleagues, they just work together, but it's way more than that. I mean, we really bleed the mission of our church. We really believe in it. I mean, really believe in it. So I remember this. So you have fun that comes out of that experience together. I remember many years ago. This is before people streamed stuff. It was before you had all this online stuff. I think Facebook was around, but it was still all kind of new. And we were going to have Snowmageddon. It was going to snow like nuts. And we knew we were going to have to cancel church. And we had a lot of momentum. We had all these people wanting to come to church. And I can't remember exactly how it happened, but you called and said, hey, I've heard of this live stream thing. And maybe we could figure that out. And so you were at your home in Powhatan. I'm in my home in another place in Powhatan. And so we're both talking to each other on the phone with our laptops open, trying to figure out, and neither of us have a technical bone in our body. Like, it's like the blind leading the blind. And yet, once we figured that out, then we threw a band together and we threw together this service that we were going to ship online for the first time ever. And it snowed 2 weeks in a row. So we did it that week at my house first. And then we did it at Beth's house the very next week. Yep. And the adventure of that and the shared experience of knowing that we were able to accomplish that together, that's part of the adventure of friendship is, I think that's part of the fun of it.
It is. There have been some really good moments. I know for me, every year when we finish Blue Christmas, if you're there, you always come and sit by me at the piano.
Every year.
And we just take a minute and sit together and kind of soak in the privilege of being pastors. And that's been a real tender moment the last couple of years.
It's really become a ritual for me when Blue Christmas is over and I go back and I stand at the chalkboard. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you got to experience it sometime. Anyway, I'll stand at the chalkboard and I'll watch this sacred moment happen, and you're always playing for a long time, as long as people need. And at some point I always make my way and just sit on the bench. And it's the only time we ever sit in silence. Most of the time, it's sort of like this, where nobody can get a word in edgewise between the two of us. And but it's the only time we just sit.
Yep.
And just
Soak it in.
It's just so powerful.
One of my favorite personal stories too, and again, because we have these different roles, we work together, you're a pastor, and all these different roles that we inhabit. But when I married Tony, you first of all were like, just marry him. You were so very encouraging of all that, which I really appreciated. But I'll never forget, because it was really special. That everything had come out of a really tender, in some cases a very painful thing that had happened, and here I was going to take this step and marry this guy. And so we set up a wedding, and I come down the aisle, and I get there, and you start to talk, and you can't stop crying. You're crying.
It's the only wedding I've ever cried in. The bride had to give me the tissue. That's the truth. That was not my best moment.
Oh, but see, for me, I'll never forget that, because I knew that you cared, and you were as invested in what was happening as I was. It was really, really sweet. Yeah. I'll never forget that. I love singing with you. It's really fun to see you stretch
daily
out.
worship. Yeah.
Daily worship is just a blast, because you're a really good singer, and you have told me before that you trust me to put you in a place where you're going to sound good and succeed. And that's where I feel most like brother and sister, because I think our voices sound together good. So that's really fun.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting analogy. I think the daily worship piece is a place where it illustrates trust, because just being vulnerable. I'm always I think I sing okay, but I don't have confidence, and I'm always afraid that someone else will just let me sing and let me sound bad, and I trust that Beth won't let me. You won't let me do that. I trust that if it doesn't sound good, you would say to me, "Hey, man, this isn't good," because I don't want to not sound good, and I just trust you to do that. Plus, you always fill in the gaps so that I can sing and sound good, and you just work around the edges of it so that it's good. So you bring out in that way the best in me, which I think is probably a good word picture about friends, real friends.
Yeah. I remember early on, I'd been working with you for a while, but I remember early on you saying to somebody in my presence, you said, "She's more than just a piano player." I've never forgotten that. It's such a way to kind of give value who I was, and really was helpful to me. Yeah. God, we've been talking for 30 minutes straight.
Feels like yesterday. What else?
Elijah wanted to, or the last question Elijah had was, how would you tell somebody else to have a friendship?
Oh,
like that?
yeah. Okay.
So what would you say to somebody who wants a friendship like we have, because they can't have our friendship?
No, they can't. They can't do
but
that.
I mean, and this has really become incredibly important in my life. What would you say if somebody wanted a friend like this?
Well, I would say most people think that it just happens. Some people get lucky, and some people aren't. But it's really about being intentional. You have to seek it out. You have to say, this is something that my life is not complete without friends like this. Some of it's trial and error, right? So we go after a friend and we test the ground, and maybe we find out, this isn't exactly what I was looking for. Because you have to have some common ground. You have to, particularly value based. You have to have some common values for that to happen. We knew we had that. And then we took some steps of vulnerability to determine, can I trust this person? We did that with each other, and you have to be willing to do that. And then along the way, then you say, I have to invest, right? I have to be willing to invest time. With it. Friendships don't happen without time, like any other good relationship. So you have to be willing to say, yes, we're going to make time for a friendship. And I think if somebody is willing to do those things, what would you say about that?
I think you alluded to it, but I think the most important thing for me, as you think about how do I get this, is look where your values are and find somebody that you can say, that person aligns, they believe in what I believe in, they believe this has great value for them. Because once you're on that same trajectory and you kind of have the same sort of purpose in mind, there's a commonality there then allows you to build some trust. And I think too, and this has been really important. Like we tease each other, but you've teased me. I don't have friends. I just don't have a lot of friends. I have 5 children. I have a really big family. I have not invested a lot of time in friendship, to be honest. And I maybe I look back now and I see some people in my life that I wish I'd invested more in. But I also believe that it is better to think of it over a long period of time and invest in one person and know that this person, it's a long arc, it's a long lifetime, and the benefits of a lifelong friendship where you've got shared history, and we're both gonna get old. We have we both have grandkids now. We swap grandkids stories, and one of these days we're gonna be old and decrepit and sitting in a nursing home somewhere, singing, rocking and singing.
One last thing I would offer to, particularly to the follower of Jesus, because we've talked about friendships generically, but when we talk about shared values, and to the Christ follower, to the person who's a follower of Jesus, the ultimate friendships, I mean the really deep friendships, the ones that you carry for a lifetime, the ones that are really the most valuable to you, are the friends who are going to always point me towards God. And that's something that I think we've done for each other. And if I had to pick one thing that I think is the most valuable component of our friendship, it's that at the end of the day, no matter what, I know you're going to always point me towards God. Whether I'm thinking right or I'm thinking not right or whatever's going on with me, you're always going to point me towards God and advise me to take action that would reflect well on God. And that's true for you too. And for me, I think there are a lot of valuable components to our friendship, but for me, that's the most valuable piece.
I would agree. I would agree. I've never told you this. I've never told anybody this, but I've written a song for you.
Oh, great.
Does
it have anything to do with humor?
No. It's a nice song.
Oh.
I just haven't finished it yet. Okay, you know why?
Why?
Because friends are friends forever. If the Lord's the Lord of them, and a friend will not say never, because a friendship will not end.
No
and
one
that's
will
why I
get
can't
that.
finish
You wrote
my
that song. Wow.
No, I didn't write that song. I've written another song, but I can't. This is seriously, but I can't finish it because I just haven't figured out how to finish it because our friendship isn't over yet.
I guess I'll need to die first. Great. You can sing
for
it at
your
my funeral. I think the video might be over now.
We've already, how many times have we said to each other, at my funeral, make sure you do this or that. So, the end.